Hey, beautiful soul. Thanks for being here. Today I'm sharing two stories. The first is called Peaches. The second, I'm Ellie. These women live in the same world in the same stretch of truth and tenderness. Some of it's made up and some of it's borrowed from real life, but all of it's real in the feeling. If something touches you or makes you think or just makes you feel a little less alone, go ahead and like, subscribe, or share. That support means more than you know. All right, let's begin. Toad Story Peaches. I've been blessed with the opportunity to teach overseas for short programs, sometimes in resorts and sometimes in day camps. The school works us hard but rewards us well with unforgettable adventures before, during, and after our work. Sometimes I teach along educators from around the world, and sometimes I bring people with me to share in the adventure. Teaching in a culture so different from my own has occasionally led to moments of culture shock for my companions, but nothing I couldn't really handle. For the most part, the trips have been incredible. The children, they are amazing, and the owner of the school and his family are the best ever hosts. One spring, as I planned my next trip, I shared the details with my book club after a meeting. One of the women named Jennifer, who for some reason liked to be called Peaches, she showed an interest in joining. Peaches was tall, red-built, a redhead, her hair still strikingly bright despite nearing 60. I knew her only through the book club, where she came across as well-spoken, insightful, soft-voiced, helpful, and kind. I knew she was divorced from a cheating husband and estranged from her 3 adult children, a daughter and 2 sons, due to their father's influence. Peaches was semi-retired from a medical lab, occasionally teaching first aid courses. From everything I knew, she seemed like a good fit. She was well-traveled, independent, and unlikely to struggle with culture shock. Oh, how wrong I was. There were small red flags in the days leading up to our departure, but I brushed them off as excitement. Then on the plane, her behavior shifted. She wasn't the person I thought I knew. Her hygiene, had noticeably slipped, to the point where I quietly suggested she take a moment to freshen up. She wasn't embarrassed in the slightest. That was my first clue. The trip included 3 of us, Jane, Peaches, and myself, for 1 month. 2 separate programs with a break in between. At the first school, I quickly realized Peaches was full of grand ideas for lesson plans. Learning through games and songs and activities, that was the motto of the program. But yet, all of her grand ideas, she couldn't execute any of them, and I was blindsided. She simply couldn't function in the role she had agreed to take on. After hours, she confided in me, saying she had found her true purpose on this trip, teaching the parents of this country how to raise their children. Holy shitballs, I said, you've got to be kidding me. These are some of the best parents I've ever met. But unfortunately, she wasn't kidding. Every moment became torture. Jane and I walked on eggshells around her, and since I had brought her on this trip, I bore the brunt of the scrutiny. I felt responsible. I could have cut her loose, left her to fend for herself, and I was tempted. But it was clear she was mentally unwell, and if anything happened to her, if she was robbed, assaulted, or worse, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself. So I stuck it out, doing my best to get her through this trip safely while vowing never to make this mistake again. At our hotel program, we had a double room. Jane and I took the back bedroom, while Peaches had the pull-out couch in the front. Oh, she was furious about this. She wanted the bedroom. Jane and I, desperate for even a sliver of peace, needed a space where we could close the door, read, pretend to sleep, anything to escape from her. Peaches decided to punish us. Each morning, as Jane and I emerged from the bedroom to make tea, Peaches would be in full downward dog, naked position, her backside facing towards the door as we walked through. How long did she have to hold that pose, waiting for us to come out? We started announcing ourselves before we opened the door. Good morning, we're coming out now. Are you ready? You're dressed? Yeah, she never was. She hoarded the hotel toiletries in her suitcase. She went through our belongings when we weren't in the room. She played loud music and danced in circles for hours, spinning on the beach, parading on the balcony, and next to nothing. Then, near the end of the trip, I got news. My father had suffered a heart attack. I couldn't take another minute of Peaches. Instead of taking the bus with them to the airport, I hired a private shuttle for the 4-hour drive. I had to be alone. When I arrived home, my father took me straight to the hospital, and while I sat with my father, he suffered another episode and was rushed into surgery. It was only after he stabilized that I began to process the month I had just endured. I went to therapy, and it took me 4 months, but I came out the other side. Peaches, meanwhile, continued on her path of chaos. She clashed with other members of the book club and caused trouble until eventually she was hospitalized. That's when we learned from her children, who had been contacted, that she had a long history of going off her medication every few years in an attempt to have a more real and more vibrant life. This is why her children had went non-contact with her over a year ago. Well, years passed. One day I was walking with a friend, Angela, who owned a small shop in a nearby village. She was telling me about a customer who had started off friendly and fun, only to return months later demanding a full refund for items she had bought and used over a year ago. When Angela refused, the customer erupted, screaming and threatening her. The authorities had to be called. Now, Angela is one of the kindest people I know. She told me that standing her ground had been hard but necessary, and she felt stronger for it, more confident and more empowered. I listened, and then I asked, what was her name? Angela hesitated. Peaches. I wasn't surprised. Years later, looking back on my chaotic trip with Peaches, I see the lessons hidden in the madness. By not abandoning her on that trip, I may have saved her life. And strangely, through all her disruption, she led me to invaluable connections both overseas and here at home. I started to wonder, what if some people are meant to push others into becoming who they need to be? I had wanted stronger leadership skills. Well, I got to practice them. Angela had wanted more confidence, and Peaches forced her to find it. What if she was a gift in her own way, helping us all rise into something better? And from this space, I can find gratitude for what she helped me discover about myself. The next story is called I'm Ellie. I was 13 the first time I realized my mother was afraid of her husband. She didn't say it out loud. She never would. But I could see it in the way her shoulders tightened when he walked into the room. Her laugh became lighter, thinner, like she was trying too hard to make everything seem normal. And then I knew normal had left the house months ago. It had been just the two of us for as long as I could remember. My father died in a farming accident when I was 3. And though I didn't really remember him, I missed the idea of him. My mom said he was the kind of man who made you feel safe without saying much. Fred was the opposite of that. When Mom married him, I wanted to believe things would get better. She wanted it so badly. It's a blessing, Nor, she said, brushing a tiny piece of hair behind my ear. I hated that nickname. My name Eleanor, and she would always call me Nor, but I didn't really like my name either, so Nor it was. And she had this soft, faraway look when she talked about him, like she needed him to be the answer to everything. I wanted to believe too. At first, it wasn't so bad. I liked the church and the singing, the potlucks, the way the youth group felt like a family. It was easy to get swept up in it all. And Fred was nice to me then, always smiling, always ready with a Bible verse, and made it seem like everything in life had a purpose. He had 4 sons, older than me, but not by much. They lived with their mom, who everyone at church talked about like she was a cautionary tale. She left the church, left him, and from what I gathered, that was the worst thing a woman could do. Fred was different when the boys were around. Softer, maybe. He joked with them and acted like the kind of dad who threw a football and gave bear hugs. But once they left, his real self slipped back into place, and the jokes stopped and the rules became tighter. I learned quickly there were 2 versions of Fred. The one everyone saw, the generous, faithful man who rescued my mother from loneliness, and the one I saw when the doors were closed. That Fred, he didn't like questions. That Fred demanded obedience. I didn't recognize the grooming at first, not when he praised me for being wise beyond my years, not when he said God had given me a special spirit meant for greater things. I wanted to believe those words. What girl doesn't want to feel special? And when he was pleased with me, he was gentler with my mom. He smiled more. Her laugh wasn't so thin. So I did what he asked. I listened, I followed the rules, I kept the peace. Then there was the willow switch. He made me fetch some willow switches one Sunday afternoon. The air felt thick and heavy, the way it gets before a summer storm. I thought maybe he wanted it for the garden or just tying up the drooping tomatoes. I didn't know. I just knew better than to ask. When he used it on her later, I understood. After that, the switches hung in a cloth bag on the back of the basement door. I avoided that door when I could, but Fred always had a way of making sure I didn't forget. Sometimes he'd open it without a word, letting the bag swing softly against the wood, just a reminder, a warning. And still, I tried to be good. I tried to make him happy because when he was happy, my mother didn't have to suffer. At 13, that felt like my job. I did have school, but Fred forbade me from staying for lunch. We lived a good 10-minute walk away, and I had to hustle to make it home, eat and get back. He also made sure I was home within 15 minutes after school let out. No social time, no friends. If I didn't comply or rebelled too much, he would punish my mother because of my behavior. By the time I was 14, I was a strange mix of emotions, clearly damaged. Yet something new was growing inside me. Anger, deep simmering anger. I was beginning to see my mother as part of the mess, no longer just a victim, but in some ways a participant. I remember at the exact moment this realization hit me. It was an ordinary afternoon, and I came home to find my mother leaning against the counter, clenching her stomach. "I'm not well," she groaned. "Get your own lunch, Nor." She looked pale and her forehead slick with sweat. I made us both a grilled cheese sandwich, but she didn't eat. And just as I was leaving for school, I heard a sound, her body hitting the floor. I ran to her, shaking her shoulders, but she didn't respond. Panic surged through me. I wasn't allowed to use the phone, so I ran to the neighbors. I had no idea what else to do. They came over, saw her, and went back and called an ambulance. My mother was taken away, and I was left alone in that house, sitting in the silence, not knowing what to do or where to go or who to talk to. I was crying when Fred came home, and he was livid. He screamed at me for calling for help, for involving outsiders. His face twisted with rage, and then, for the very first time, he hit me, and he hit me hard, hard enough to knock me down. I hit the coffee table as I fell, and I felt the sharp sting as my eyes split open. Blood dripped onto the carpet, and when he saw it, his anger only grew. Then he did something worse. He grabbed my shirt and tore it open. I fought hard. I scratched his face, nails scraping deep in to draw blood. The shock of my resistance threw him off, but only for a second. I tried to run, heading for the back door, but he caught me before I could make it. He threw me to the floor, his hand tightening around my neck, the other yanking at my clothes. I don't know where the strength came from, but my hand found the heavy metal doorstop we used to prop open the back door from the summer. I gripped it tight and swung it as hard as I could and smashed it in his head. He collapsed instantly. I didn't wait to see if he was dead or unconscious. I just ran. My feet barely touched the ground as I sprinted back to the neighbor's house. When the woman answered the door, she saw me, bloody and shaking, my clothes ripped. Her face filled with concern, and without a word, she pulled me inside and locked the door behind me. She made a phone call. Not to the police, not yet. Instead, she called a woman. 20 minutes later, she arrived. Her name was Patricia. She was the one who took charge, the one who called the police and the ambulance. I never told my neighbor what happened. I couldn't. I just cried, and she didn't ask. She just held me until Patricia showed up. Patricia knelt in front of me, her voice steady, sure. I know what happened, she said. I'm taking you to the hospital. I won't leave you, not for a second. A lot of people have let you down, but I promise you this, I won't. And I swear to you, come hell or high water, you will never set foot in that house again. And so I found myself in the hospital. The tension in the air was thick, the staff trying to be neutral and professional, but I could feel it. They were walking a tightrope between care and silence. It was too much until I couldn't take it. I broke down screaming. My mother was somewhere in the same hospital. Fred was there too. We were all under the same roof, all getting the help we needed, but I knew the truth. I was the only one who would never heal from this. I looked like a mess on the outside, bloodied and bruised, my eyes already swelling. But the real wounds, the ones inside, those would take the longest to heal. A nurse gave me a shot, and finally, mercifully, I slipped into unconsciousness. I woke up to the sound of voices, the flash of a camera. Police officers were in the room taking pictures of my injuries, trying to wake me so they could ask questions. But Patricia was there too, holding my hand, soothing me, reminding me that I was safe. I barely had time to register anything before the worry hit me. My mother. Patricia squeezed my hand and told me that she had checked on her. My mother's appendix had burst, but they caught it just barely in time. If I hadn't gotten help when I did, she would have died. I had saved her life. My voice barely worked, but I managed to whisper, "Is Fred alive?" She nodded. "He is, but you never have to worry about him again." I told my story to the police, and Patricia stayed by my side. She asked me about myself, what I liked, what my dreams were, if I had any family on my father's side. Looking back, maybe it was the trauma, but I never even asked who she was or why she was helping me. At some point, she asked me what my favorite foods were, and it seemed like such a strange question, but I answered. Lasagna, mangoes, long, solid red licorice, cotton candy, and stuffing. "Not all together, though," I said. She just smiled. That evening, as I drifted in and out of the pain meds, I noticed a TV being wheeled into my room. I was distracted by it, barely noticing it, when 4 young men entered, each carrying one of my favorite foods. My stepbrothers. And behind them walked Patricia. It hit me all at once. Patricia, this woman the church had whispered about, this woman they painted as a villain, was my savior. She looked at me, her voice strong and sure. "Girl, I used to live in that house. That's why the neighbor called me. She's a friend, and she knows how evil Fred is." Patricia got custody of me. Her sons, my real brothers now, treated me with kindness and respect. I told them not to call me Eleanor or Nornor. I hated that, the way Fred had said it. And, of course, Nornor didn't suit me now. From then on, I was Ellie. I took Patricia's maiden name as well, so we all had the last name. Fred never went to jail. He ended up in a psych ward, pleaded out, and my mother stayed by his side until he did it again. She finally left him and ended up in a shelter. I see her now and then, but I don't trust her. The trust and support and unconditional love I found in my new family is the greatest gift I've ever been given. And when I came out as gay, my brothers threw me a coming out party. Patricia, my brothers, my friends, and my girlfriend, all they are celebrating me. Now, in my 40s, I have a wife, 2 kids, nieces and nephews, a real family. All of our daughters have Patricia as their middle name. Life hasn't been perfect, but damn, it's been good. Well, thanks for listening. Whether it's Peaches or Ellie or something stirred you, maybe if you found a bit of courage, I'm grateful that you stayed with me through this. Stories have a way of finding who they're meant for. And if these found you, maybe it's because it was time. Feel free to like, subscribe, or share with anyone you think might need it. And I'll be back with more stories soon. Until then, take care of your heart.